What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 127 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC Vegas 2. We're
Come on,
talking
John.
UFC 286. I am better than that. We got Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards. They're running it back for a third time. Yeah, it's an exciting fight card. I have a fair amount of bets. Well, I don't have like that many bets, but I have some like pretty big bets of the ones I do have. I'm pretty pumped for it. I'm pumped it's an afternoon card. We get to enjoy it, potentially enjoy our nights. Tonight, I've brought back the square hat because that's about the way this year has been going. It's been a fucking bloodbath so far. Jumping off the Marab train to lay 5 units on Peter Yan was clearly not the way last week, but I'm back. We got tequila seltzers. I'm confident. We're going to get into it in a little bit. We got Jon Kelly's coming on with us tonight. He is running a little late. He's going to probably pop in about 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to throw it to him, let him give his picks on the fights we break down. But until then, we'll get to it. As usual, got me, John, at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. Guys, if you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It would help us out. You know, give us the SEO. Come on, help your boys out. Lags, what do you think of the card in general, as far as European cards go?
Well, so like you mentioned, the 1 p.m. start time. Gotta love it. I always love early start times instead of like, your casual 6, 7 p.m. prelim start time. Oh, yeah. UK, obviously, gotta love that crowd. One of the better crowds that we have internationally. And it's a great card, top to bottom. And not to mention that, and I think somebody tweeted out earlier, I couldn't remember what account it was, but it's nice having a London card without Paddy and Molly on the card. It's kind of nice.
Paddy's kind of electric, though. I enjoy the theatrics that come with Molly.
I think the hype's died down a bit from.
But Paddy at least, like, the guy, he brings some energy. Molly's forgettable, honestly. Like, she really, that one celebration was epic. In the cage. Yeah, a little too much. But yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I'm pumped. I love afternoon cards. That way I can, think of various ways to kill myself for hours if I lose, and if I win, it's a nice, pleasant night that I can spend with my family. Yeah, we'll go bet other things. We got the NCAA tournament this weekend. They're going to be running for like 1 a.m. So exactly. It's pretty exciting. Yeah, I guess we'll hop right into it here. We do have 15 fights. It's a long one. Slate. It's a long one. 1 p.m. start time. I'm fucking pumped. Okay, with that said, we'll jump right into it, though. Lags, I'll let you start it off. We got a weird fight. Veronica Macedo, she hasn't fought since, I believe she was on the last card before we shut down the world for COVID, if I'm not mistaken, and has not fought since. Taking on Juliana Miller. She is the most recent tough flyweight champion. What do you think, Lags?
So, yes, her last fight was in 2020 of March. Bea Malecki. Your girl, John. Oh,
yeah.
But no, one of my only plays on the card so far is the under 2.5 rounds here, minus 105. It's a pretty low level fight. I get it. Like Miller is a minus 400 favorite. People will be a little queasy with that, but I think she has all the skills in a low level women's MMA fight that you want: the aggression, the volume, the wrestling, the cardio. I think she's going to put on the display and finish Macedo on the Hardy, I guess just would say now, on the mat. So yeah, I got a unit and a half on the under 2.5 rounds, minus 105.
Legs, we're trying to save some time for Jon Kelly here. Let's pick up the speed. Let's throw some more words in the breakdown. I want to.
Sorry.
We're gonna slow it down here. We're gonna talk slow.
That's fair. Yeah, I know. I'm a little fast talker. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, I think Miller inside the distance bets, under 2.5 round bets, Miller by KO, anything like that's pretty good.
I don't know. There's a part of me that is like, man, Juliana Miller was just an underdog or just the even money with Brogan Walker. Like, should she really be minus 400 to Veronica Macedo? But then it's like, oh, it's Veronica Macedo. Like, she really just offers not a lot. I will give her credit for kind of digging deep and showing some toughness against Malecki, because she was getting beaten up pretty bad there, and she just kept biting the mouthpiece, even dead tired, coming forward and striking. And if they stood and struck, I think Macedo would probably be competitive here, but I don't really think Miller's very likely to do that. She's going to do what she does, take her down. And I mean, I think Macedo could potentially armbar her. I don't think that's that crazy personally. So, I mean, that wouldn't shock me, but I'm kind of aligned with you. I haven't played it, but I do sort of think, given the amount of ground and pound Juliana Miller throws and how just aggressive she tends to be in all positions. She is going to be finish centric here, whether that's getting herself stuck in an armbar or just getting them out and smashing her. I kind of like the under as well. I don't know if I'll play it or not. It's because it makes me queasy betting even money women's unders, but I do see the angle, and I'd much rather have the under here than the over. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Moving on, we got an interesting fight. We got Jai Herbert. He's taking on Ludovic Klein. I think, are they both coming off fighting on a London card, if I'm not mistaken?
I believe Herbert was Herbert Nelson? Was that?
I think that was on the Blades card, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. So they were both on the same card. Yeah. So they both last fought Curtis Blades and Tom Aspinall when Curtis baptized Tom. The real ones, remember.
Cashed nice.
Yeah, cashed on Curtis Blades. But yeah, it's an interesting fight. I kind of sort of think Klein is the side. It's funny because I think Jai's a better athlete. I think he's a better technical striker. He's obviously taller. He's longer. He might even hit harder. And he's probably fought better competition in the aggregate. The problem for me is, I mean, Herbert's like a baby deer when you try to grapple this guy, man. Which is not, I mean, it's not great. I love Moicano, but he made Renato Moicano look like Khabib trying to wrestle him. And Moicano's wrestling it's adequate. I think that's the best way to put it. He's not going out here, though, and mauling, decent grapplers. It's just not happening. If he gets their back, sure, but he's not getting takedowns against, decent grapplers for the most part. And we've seen it a number of times with Herbert, both in the UFC and before. And then on top of that, the guy's got the classic tall man's defense, and he can't really seem to take a punch. His chin, he tends to melt whenever you put it on his chin. And so while I do think he's the more skilled fighter, Klein has shown a propensity to attempt takedowns. Obviously, his performance against Mason Jones in his last fight, where he was able to reverse him and actually gain top time against Jones, was quite impressive. Jones is considerably better grappler than Jai Herbert is. And in the striking, as much as I favor Klein or favor Herbert, I think Klein's pretty durable. I think he's a bit more dynamic, and Jai is there to be badly hurt. So I don't know. I'm always hesitant to go against, a guy with Herbert's measurables who's fought his strength of schedule. But at the same time, I kind of think Klein matches up fairly well with him. Not a line I'm eager to play, but I do kind of lean the Klein side here. What do you think?
It's funny enough, we were talking about buying time on these early fights, and this is actually one of my least interesting fights on the card. And for me, the only pushback I'll really say, on the Klein side, I just don't like the volume really. He just kind of seems I think this could very well be just a tepid fight from the outside where not much is going on, and the overs look like good value.
Yeah, I could say that. What is the over?
So the over 2.5 was plus money. I was curious to see what the over 2.5 is plus 135.
Okay, that's pretty. If Klein's smart, he's gonna wrestle here. That's really not terrible.
And the last thing I'll add there on the overs for me, I'm more of an over one. I get the over 2.5, it's nice plus money. I would rather an over 1.5 guy. I'd rather lay the chalk on decent over 1.5. We'll get on to the fight later, but the Mokaev fight, I think the over 1.5 there, decent juice, is probably a good look than the over 2.5 at plus money. But yeah,
what's the over 1.5 here? 50 minus 150 minus 185.
It's not out yet.
Oh, okay.
I was
gonna say that wouldn't be bad. I'd lay. Although I do kind of think if someone's gonna finish, it's probably just gonna be Herbert getting melted pretty quickly here. The
over 1.5's not out yet. I was looking on DraftKings, so nothing yet. But yeah.
All right. Well, we'll move on from this. Moving on, we got Joanne Wood. She's taking on Luana Carolina. I bet Wood. I bet her minus 160. To be quite honest, I've kind of dabbled adding more here at minus 173. Joanne Wood, not really someone you think about when you're thinking about laying chalk on a WMMA fight. But I also, and I've seen that take a few times, who's betting, Joanne Wood at juice. But Luana Carolina, it's kind of funny because I kind of think, the takes about Wood kind of missed like what's been happening to her. Like, yeah, Joanne Wood's 1-4 in her last 4 fights. Like, no doubt about that. She doesn't look quite as good as she used to. But like, let's look at those losses. Jennifer Maia, who we'll discuss in a bit, Lauren Murphy, Tyler Santos, Alexa Grasso. All 4 of those losses are women who fought for the title in the very recent past. She also has wins against Andrea Lee and Jessica Ai in that time. And it's not as if she's come in here and fought poorly against, some of these women. Like, yeah, Santos blew her out of the water. But like, you look at her last fight, she got subbed by Grasso, but she outlanded her 34-16 before she got subbed. She was very clearly winning the stand-up in that fight. Basically any time she's gotten a standing fight in recent history, she's fared fairly well. Like, the problem with Wood is it's just like relatively easy to take her down, and her willingness to accept guard can get her held down. But she's fighting Luana Carolina, who to me, Luana Carolina hasn't even attempted a takedown in the UFC. This is a woman who got out grappled by, Molly McCann. And so like, I look at the fight, and of the two, I think Wood is much more likely to get takedowns and or have significant success on top. And at range, it's like Carolina got outlanded by McCann 85-64. She got outlanded by Pauliana Botello at range. Like, she's going to really compete with Wood in the kickboxing here? I really just don't. I'm not saying it's impossible. It is WMMA, but I feel very certain that JoJo is going to outland her by many, many strikes in this fight, and also very likely has like the grappling upside here. Plus, she's fought a way better strength of schedule against Carolina, who's looked very mid against very mid competition. To me, it's like this is easy -230, -250 range for JoJo. So I like her a good bit here. I think the market is overreacting quite a bit to the fact that she's lost to literally Valentina's last 4 title defenses and her last 4 losses. What do you think?
Kind of how you started off the breakdown. It's just kind of a fight that I'm not looking to lay chalk on, really. and I get it. I understand like the step down in competition for Wood, and probably should be a good spot. It just, to me, probably competitive-ish on the feet. Like, I understand.
Is it competitive?
I understand Wood's definitely going to land more, but like I think Carolina at least has the bigger moment upside. Like Wood's not busting it great. I'm not saying that like Wood has like I would favor her in a decision or anything. I just like -180 Wood doesn't exactly like.
Fair enough.
Get me to the bookie.
I think JoJo's going to kick her fucking ass, to be honest. To be honest with you.
That's fair. So that's another thing I would add then, and not that it's a super different price than the one you got, but like decision now at -130.
I don't even like decision though, because I feel like Carolina is like enough of a liability that like JoJo took Chuk down 3 times. People forget it because she hasn't really been proactively wrestling her most recent opponents. But that's also in somewhat due to the women she's been fighting who are difficult to wrestle and or she's had significant edges on the feet. I think if her getting Santos down, she probably can get to some dominant positions here. Like Santos is a very poor grappler, I'm not saying it's likely, but I am saying it's like -170 versus -130.
Well, yeah.
It's like 62% versus 55%. You're kind of steering into like a weird range there where you have to be so precise in your estimation. And it's like, I just lay the number, That's my view anyway.
Yeah, fair.
If I lay the wood on JoJo, it could be a bad time. I don't think it's going to be a bad time, JoJo.
Hey, you're laying the wood on Wood,
Yeah, there you go. JoJo Calderwood, who's married to John Wood. I actually honestly might. We'll talk about who in a bit. But I'm probably going to add some more money in there on her in a parlay with someone else. But moving on, we got Jake Hadley. He's taking out Malcolm Gordon. Interesting fight here. I actually do think it's interesting despite, the very big line. We got Jake Hadley. What's his current price here?
350.
-400. He's 400 now. Bet online. So -400 bet online. Come back on Malcolm Gordon +300. Flags, what are your thoughts here?
So I had some mild interest here in the over 1.5 at like -150. Not super strong take or anything, but I just think that Hadley can not dominate, but like control him in the wrestling, in the grappling. But like I don't think it's going to be like a situation where he just absolutely runs through him by any means. So if I was looking to have any action on the fight, I would look at the over, but just a pass.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet this fight, but there was a part of me when it first came out that was fairly interested in betting Malcolm Gordon. I'm not high on Malcolm Gordon or anything like that, but I did think, him scrambling at least somewhat competitively with Mokaev was somewhat impressive. We saw him kind of do the same thing with Denise Bondar the fight before, albeit that, Bondar got hurt 2 minutes into that fight. So the sample was quite small. But I do think Gordon's kind of a competitive scrambler. Like, I don't think he's the best wrestler, but he can kind of make things happen if you leave yourself open to it. And so I was kind of interested, but then you rewatch, and I think Hadley's got some defensive grappling weaknesses, but I kind of just don't think I can put Gordon. I mean, I cannot put Malcolm Gordon in that Alan Nascimento category. Nascimento is a much better positional grappler. He's a much better wrestler, and he's gigantic. Whereas Gordon is not positionally sound at all, tends to lose position when attempting shit. And I think Hadley's probably the better submission grappler in general. And then it's on the feet, Gordon's scrappy, but he has zero chin whatsoever. He doesn't really have much defense. And Hadley's shown an ability to keep an output that Gordon just hasn't shown an ability to compete with. Yeah, I was actually kind of impressed with Hadley's last performance. I didn't bet it, but I thought about betting Candelario against him. And you saw Hadley keep an extremely high pace. Granted, the fight ended 8 minutes in, but it's he landed 95 strikes or something. It's just something that's impressive to me. He seems like a fairly promising prospect. I don't know if his grappling is ever going to be what the market thought it was coming into the UFC. But when you're fighting at a pace like that, I'm not sure how much it needs to be. I kind of think Gordon needs back takes here. Otherwise, he's probably in big trouble. Plus, they're in London. I've got enough fades on British fighters on this card. Do I really need to fade another one here? I'm good with passing it. I think Hadley's going to knock him out. Moving on, though. Speaking of a British fighter that I'm fading, we got Dusko Todorovic. He's taking on Christian Leroy Duncan. I bet Dusko big here. I think this line is totally and completely insane, personally. I make Dusko a flat-out favorite. Someone said this morning, and I kind of agree with this perspective. If neither of these guys were Cage Warriors champions and they were fighting in Cage Warriors, Dusko would probably be a favorite in this fight. The thing is, Christian Leroy Duncan is undefeated at 7-0, and welcome to the stream, Jon Kelly. Before I go into my Christian Duncan Dusko Todorovic breakdown, let's give a round of applause. You can find Jon at Jon Kelly DFS. We slowed it down. We took everything in reverse, tried to, grind this out. Do you want to take us through your picks on the first four fights of the night?
Sure. Which one, what order are we using here?
Tapology.
Tapology. Okay. Give me 1 second. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Last minute thing had me jammed up. I'll explain offline, but it's actually a pretty wild story that I'm sure you guys will get a kick out of. But I'm here now, so I'm ready to deliver, ready to talk some fights with you guys. Thanks for having me on, as always. So first fight is the Juliana Miller.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I take Miller here. I didn't bet Miller. But I do think that she wins here pretty convincingly. Veronica Macedo or Veronica Hardy, recently married. I just honestly, I can't put a ton of faith in. I don't see how she wins minutes here. I think she's probably an early sub or bust. And she has been able to do that in the past. But what is it? She's lost 4 of her last 5 fights or something like that. She also retired in 2020 or after the Bea Malecki decision. She retired for health reasons. She was having concussion issues, going through some mental struggles as well. It wasn't good. And then now making a comeback off a long layoff and fighting somebody who's green and raw, but is aggressive and pretty powerful as well. I honestly think Miller just kind of gas pedals her here. And I don't think Macedo has much for her really in any area.
All right. Next up, we got Jai Herbert, Ludovic Klein.
Yeah, so that one's kind of interesting to me. I could see it being a banger, honestly. Jai Herbert is a guy who gets a lot of hate because of his durability, and rightfully so. Yeah, sorry, late to the party. Rightfully so. I mean, he's been knocked out 3 or 4 times. His chin, the way that he fights, his chin and durability just can't really can't really support it, or at least not against certain style of fighters. And I think Ludovic Klein is probably one of those guys. He does have power. Really the only time where one of the only times I wasn't impressed with Klein was the Nate Landwehr performance. That one was kind of surprising to me. But when you really go back and watch it, it's like, I mean, I don't think Jai Herbert is going to fight anywhere similar to that style. Like Landwehr, just absolute insane cardio, whereas Herbert and like he's going to spaz volume, go rabies. Herbert is very historically low volume striker, does have power, is going to have a reach advantage. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him land some big shots here and be competitive in the striking. But because he's so low output and because of the durability concerns, it's like he's basically knockout or bust here. And I think Klein's probably more likely to get a knockout and the better round winner. So I like Ludovic Klein. I think early prices were good, but I didn't get on him early. So I'm probably just going to pass on that one. But I do think Klein wins.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Joanne Wood, Luana Carolina, what are your thoughts? I bet JoJo here.
Yeah, I know you bet JoJo. I don't have a play on it. I don't really feel strongly, honestly, one way or the other. I'm a recovering JoJo stan. I was for years. I mean, you could ask Jonah back when we would do the pod. He was always like, "Well, JoJo's on the card. I know you're going to talk about her." But yeah, I guess my fandom has moved on to another Scottish fighter that we'll get to later. That me and you are on the opposite sides on. But this one, like I said, it's not a strong take for me. I think on the feet is probably competitive. Both of them, keep a decent pace, decent volume. I think JoJo's the better striker. But I also kind of think skills don't matter in women's MMA, which again, we'll touch on that later. But I do think the striking is competitive. I think Wood would probably be the one to land takedowns here if she tries to land takedowns. I'm not convinced that she will. But I just kind of see it being a competitive kickboxing match for the most part. I lean JoJo. I think she's the better striker, probably going to put more volume out there and more likely to land takedowns of the two. So I guess I go with her by decision, but again, it's no bet for me. Just like, and the reason why I'm not with you laying the chalk on her. And I know, I think you got a good price anyway.
60,
I think,
yeah,
minus 160. So some nice CLV. So shout out to you. But I think the reason why I didn't end up joining you is just because like, There's been a couple fights, and I love JoJo, but there's been a couple recent fights where it's like, does she really even want to be in there much anymore? Like, it's like, I don't know. It's just a little concerning, but I know obviously some of those matchups were much, much tougher than Luana Carolina, who's basically one of the, very low level in terms of the division. So I do think Wood wins. I'm not going to bet it. And
last one before we're caught up, we got Jake Hadley, Malcolm Gordon. Any hot takes here?
No hot take. I honestly wanted to back my guy Malcolm Gordon. I know he came through. I think we both bet him as a big underdog in one of those fights. Yeah. Francisco Figueiredo. Oh, that spot was great. But I don't think this is it though. Gordon, he's not a horrible grappler, but you can see guys can be way more physical than him. Anybody with a decent ground game is going to basically consolidate top position. I think Hadley does that here. Even though Hadley's been sloppy in the past in terms of like his positional grappling, we've seen him get reversed. He's not a great striker, but I do actually think he's better than Malcolm Gordon here. And Gordon's another guy, I just don't trust the chin. This dude gets rocked and wobbled in basically all of his fights. So I actually think Hadley gets him out of there by TKO in this one.
All right. Well, that brings us up to speed. So now we'll get into it. We got Christian Leroy Duncan, Dusko Todorovic. As I mentioned, I'm big on Dusko here. Got 2.5 units on him, average price about plus 167. And apparently I'm getting reverse CLV'd on it. Just like I got reverse CLV'd on Josh Fremd last week. And I'll be honest, if it hits plus 200, I'll probably add to it again. I'm pretty confident in Dusko. I mean, as in all of Dusko's fights, the possibility of him getting KO'd is quite live, given his just general willingness to keep his hands down and just try to use his head movement to defend. But like I look at the fight and it's like Christian Duncan to me, even taking out all of the macro factors that I think favor Dusko here. To me, Christian Duncan, he's explosive, he's athletic, he hits very hard, but beyond that though, he's very low volume. He's not a great grappler. I think he's hittable. I just don't think he's a very good fighter outside of like pure offensive technical ability and explosiveness. And on the other side, it's like Dusko, it's like, yeah, he kind of lacks technical ability on the feet, but he is he does keep a high work rate. We've seen him outstrike, plenty of guys regionally. Some guys that are better than anybody Duncan's fought. He's certainly the better grappler here. I think the cardio is probably similar. Dusko's gotten some shit for cardio, but you look at the right fight and it's like the guy threw 140 strikes in round 2. Were we really going to give him shit for kind of slowing down like in that fight? Ultimately, I just look at it. It's like tape wise, I think Dusko is better at everything except pure power. He's certainly the better submission grappler. Then it's like you zoom out macro wise and, Christian Duncan fought basically nobody worthwhile in CW. Even like Will Curry's probably the best opponent he's beaten. And Will Curry's like fine. Dusko, before he got to the UFC, he may not have beaten great guys here, but like he submitted Alexander Popek. He knocked out Michel Pereira. He beat Teddy Ash. And now he's 3-3 in the UFC. They're about the same age. He's got double the experience. He should be the minute winner. To me, this is like clear Dusko minus 150. So I'm pretty big on him. Lags, what do you think?
So yeah, I do think Duncan, like you mentioned, is super dynamic, super like great finisher on the feet. And to me, I think it comes down to how much you rate Dusko's wrestling. Because to me, I think it's just not nothing special. So I think it's going to be a tough time holding and keeping Christian Duncan down. So I don't know. To me, I think Dusko does get knocked out at some point.
Jon Kelly, what do you think?
Not a hot take, but yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have a bet on this yet. It's really just a question of how big on Dusko for me. I am going to be betting Dusko here. I think, at these prices, you almost have to, in my opinion. I'm totally with John on this one. I think Dusko's much more proven. And it's not that Leroy Duncan, it's not that he's a bad fighter. Like, he definitely has some attributes that I think, if he shores up some things, he could definitely compete at the UFC level. But it's like, outside of the knockout power, which he clearly does have, 7-0, I think all but one are by knockouts or something like that. The way that he times his knockouts is pretty impressive. Like, he's always looking for, that flying knee. I think he's dropped a couple guys with that spinning back fist. He times his big shots really well, and that's impressive. And I think against Dusko, who basically only relies on head movement, yeah, of course he can catch him. But I also think that that's basically the only way that he wins this fight, and I can't justify the price. Like, you can't price Duncan KO at 60% or whatever he's at now. It doesn't make sense to me, because the guy is actually take all the good things I said just there about him, take those away, and it's like, okay, well, what's the negative? He's very low output. He generally doesn't keep a high pace. In terms of who's going to be controlling the center, I think that's going to be Dusko Todorovic. I think he's going to pressure him, move forward. And I agree with Lags, with what Lags says. I don't rate Dusko's wrestling that good either. He's landed, I think one takedown in the Daquan Townsend fight. Who cares about that? And then I think he landed like one other in one of his other fights. But where I do think he's going to have success is even if Duncan, who seems to have pretty solid first level takedown defense, even if he's able to shuck off some of those takedowns, I think we're going to see a lot of Dusko cage work up against the fence. And that's where Dusko is actually really good. And that's where I think he's going to have success. So I just think Dusko more active, going to control him up against the fence, give him a little bit of grappling upside as well. Like plus 185, I'm there all day against an unproven guy that's basically fought nobody over in Cage Warriors. So I like Dusko. It's probably going to be a multi-unit play for me, especially if it hits plus 200.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'll keep it with you, John. We got Lerone Murphy, Gabriel Santos. Any thoughts here?
This is okay. So the Santos guy, I kind of wanted to fade Murphy just because I've never been really high on Murphy, but I couldn't get there with Santos. I don't think he's bad. He's the LFA, the LFA featherweight champ. He seems to be like okay, like he's an active striker. I think he's a southpaw or switches stances a lot, throws a lot of kicks. So he's going to stay active on the feet. I like that about him because Leron Murphy is not very active. He's one of the more low-paced guys, but does have clear power. I just don't know. Like, I don't like Santos's defense, really. Like, I think he gets hit a lot. Not that Murphy throws a ton, but I also, I don't rate his grappling super high either. I'm not sure that he's going to have much success. And I know Murphy can't defend takedowns, and that's why I'm not backing Murphy here. But I do think it could be one where it's competitive, but Murphy probably edges it, and he has the hometown cooking to a degree as well. So I'd say Murphy by decision.
Yeah, I more or less agree. First of all, it's kind of a weird dynamic because the fight was booked fairly late. So I don't really know what kind of shape either guy is in. Like, I don't think they didn't book this fight till what, Saturday?
No. Murphy was originally booked. He was originally booked.
Murphy was booked.
Yeah,
Nathaniel
Santos short notice. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, obviously Murphy's a lot more proven and a lot more tested. But that being said, Murphy hasn't fought in almost 2 years himself. You know, we don't really know where he's at this point. And on the Santos side, like, I kind of agree with the technicals, Jon Kelly, with all you said. Like, I think Santos could conceivably land takedowns, but also it's like, I kind of think people look at Santos tape and they're like, yeah, this guy's good. But no one's talking about the fact that this guy was plus 300 against Jose Delano one fight ago. And people were like, yeah, Delano's sick. This line's great. So I don't know. I don't really have a strong feeling about it. My lean's Murphy, just basically based on experience. I think he's a more reliable kickboxer. And while I think Santos can get takedowns, he doesn't really strike me as a guy who's going to go, move to half guard and just consolidate top position here. So I think you have to lean Murphy, but I couldn't bet this. Lags, any thoughts from you?
So I actually bet the DraftKings opener minus 135.
Okay.
Don't plan on tracking that or anything unless the line ends up coming down. But yeah, I more or less agree. I mean, on the feet, I think Murphy hits much harder. I think the leg kicks are going to be a big factor. I think Santos in general is pretty hittable standing. Jon talked about the wrestling a little bit. I think he shoots from very far out. His takedowns are a little predictable. I think Murphy just a solid, buy low on Murphy.
Fair enough. Moving on, we got Muhammad Mokaev. He's taking on Jafel Filo. Muhammad Mokaev, as is the trend these days, is minus 800. Lags, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually think the over 1.5 is decent value, minus 160. I think Mokaev should just be able to dominate him in the grappling, really. I think Filo on the feet, he hits hard. I think he's gassy. I think the volume, as the fight goes, is definitely precipitates. I don't think he's that much of a grappler, personally. Like, another thing where it's like he shoots super far out. I don't think he's going to have any success controlling Mokaev, getting him down at all. I think Mokaev should just be able to control him for large portions of the fight, really.
Jon Kelly, what do you think?
Yeah, I largely agree with what Lag said there. I mean, Mokaev, impressive work rate with the grappling, of course, averages nearly 9 takedowns per 15 minutes. Jafal Filo, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's a Contender Series guy. As you guys know, I go balls deep on Contender Series, but this is a guy who, honestly, I expected to like a lot more coming into that fight, and I expected him to look better than he did as well. So it was kind of one of those things where it's always like, I always make a mental note of the fighters where I expect them to, it's kind of a letdown performance in a sense. So I honestly, like, I'm fine with people that want to take a big shot and try to fade Mokaev. I really don't think this is the spot. I think he gets out grappled here. Filo is a black belt, but we've seen, even in sloppy regional fights where he's being controlled by much less grapplers than Muhammad Mokaev here. I don't mind that look at the over that Lags mentioned. I'm assuming that's the 1.5.
Yeah, the 1.5, 160.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that seems actually really good. I might tell you on that, but I think it goes to decision. I'd say Mokaev decision.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add. I bet Filo on Contenders, and it was one of those fights where I was like very confident. I'm like, if Filo gets his hands around this guy, he's going to own him grappling. Like, I know Roybert's not good. He didn't really own him grappling that much, which is kind of, I would be concerned with Filo regardless going into this fight. But the fact that, he kind of struggled to have his way with Roybert Echeverria makes me have very little hope for him in this fight against Mokaev, unless, I feel like he's probably like meme guillotine or like some knee up the middle or bust, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you guys. I lean over. I was just checking out what 2-3 prices are, but even that, it's like, I think plus 300 for round 2, plus 550 for round 3. That's not interesting at all. Yeah, Mokaev should roll. I don't really think there's much that needs to be talked about that you guys didn't cover there. Moving on, Jon Kelly, what do you think here? We got Sam Patterson, Yanal Ashmaz.
Yeah, I know some people are backing the dog here. I couldn't get there. I mean, honestly, I wanted to. Patterson, another Contender Series guy. I had a big fade on him on Contender Series with my guy Vinicius Sensi. I know a few of us were on the train there trying to cash that one. Hey, he won round one. We'll always have round one. But honestly, Patterson's a guy who I think does have clear finishing ability, but he's another one of those guys where I'm not sure you can count on him to consistently win minutes. He's extremely hittable, basically doesn't move his head at all. Not a great grappler, but he does have a tight guillotine choke. That's one of his better weapons, and he is going to look for that when guys shoot on him. I actually think that's pretty live in this spot here. Yeah. I think, that was my pick, was Patterson by submission. The Ash Moz guy, honestly, I just think he's just a jobber. Like, he seems like okay in multiple areas, but he's going to be super undersized here. Not an impressive wrestler to me. I think he gets boxed up on the feet. And if he does shoot for multiple takedowns, I think at some point Patterson snatches the neck and gets the guillotine.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree. I just don't like, I understand the dog love, because I really don't rate Patterson. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
I really don't rate Patterson either, like, much at all. But I'm with you. Like, what does Ash Moz bring to the table? Like, the guy's basically fought nobody. Even his Contender Series fight wasn't against anybody impressive. Or not Contender, sorry, Challenger Series fight wasn't against anybody impressive. And it's like, I'm with you, John. I think his move is to go to the grappling here, like, fairly aggressively if he wants a chance. But even if he does that, like, I feel as if Patterson's definitely fought better grapplers. He's really long. And while I don't really rate his grappling, big, long guys like that with decent choke games are really tricky, especially for guys of Ash Moz's level. And on the feet, I'm not a huge Patterson fan, but Ash Moz has certainly never fought somebody that's 6'3" with like a 6-inch reach advantage before. I think he's going to have trouble tracking him down here. A pretty tough time. I just haven't, like, I would need to see Ash Moz show competitive tape against somebody who's at least close to UFC level for me to have any confidence in him here. I kind of think Patterson just puts him out. Maybe they grapple around a bit, but I'd be a little surprised if Ash Moz just, was able to, get to a dominant position and hold him down here. Lags, what do you think?
So, yeah, I was leaning more so on the dog side as well with you guys. And I think if the line still blows out a little bit to like plus 275, plus 300, I would have some interest, because I do think that Ash Moz's, his main attribute in the wrestling is kind of Patterson's main weakness, in my opinion. Like, obviously, you talked about the striking a little bit. He's hittable and this and that. And Ash Moz could, he's got a lot of winging overhands on the feet, could catch him. I think it's a pretty low percentage. But, yeah, I think he largely has to just dominate in the wrestling. But, yeah, it's low level for sure.
Yeah, moving on. We got Chris Duncan, Omar Morales. I'm pretty big on Omar. I'll be honest, like, my biggest fear with respect to this fight and this bet is it seems like everybody likes Omar this week, and yet the line is not, it's moving the other way. I bet it minus 110. It briefly hit minus 119. And I was like, yes, all right, it's moving my way. And now it's back to minus 115, Duncan. I always find that concerning. Usually that's indicative that there's pretty sharp money on the other side, even if they're not public about it. But with that said, I think the biggest concern for Morales in this fight is he's 37 years old. I think everybody would agree with that. The thing is, he doesn't have many miles on him. It's not as if he's gone in there and taken like a fuckload of damage. Like, yes, he got knocked out in his last fight, but I actually thought he looked pretty good in that fight against Medic. There was competitive fights. He was clearly winning the second round before he got caught. And to me, Medic is just kind of a tough matchup because Medic is tall, he's long, he's very fast, he's very explosive. And, compared to Chris Duncan, who there's a lot of tape on Chris Duncan. It's his UFC debut, but the guy's fought on Contender Series twice. He had some fights in Cage Warriors. He fought in Bellator. I look at Chris Duncan and I see a slow, plodding pressure boxer who basically just wants to get inside on you and turn the lights out. And he does hit hard. But I just don't see a lot of strong tools for closing the distance here. You saw him in his fight against Slava basically just get picked apart in that fight. Finished, obviously. We saw him fight Charlie Campbell. He basically got finished twice before he knocked out Charlie Campbell in that fight. And prior to that, he just didn't fight anybody that was really any good at all. And I also think it's kind of important to keep in mind that Duncan's his 2 fights in Contender Series both came in a small cage, which seems pretty relevant to me because they're going to be in the big cage here. And like Omar is very much an in all the way in, all the way out kind of guy. Like he does not sit in the pocket and have heavy exchanges. He darts in, he gets out. And to me, that kind of guy seems like Duncan's nightmare. And like I know Omar was fighting at 145 prior to this, but he's actually bigger than Duncan is. He's taller, he's longer, he's obviously more experienced, he's fought better guys. To me, this fight reminds me a lot of Shane Young versus Omar. The biggest difference is Shane Young is faster and he's much better at implementing the game that Duncan wants to implement, which is pressure boxing. And Omar looked about minus 200 in that fight. So like, I don't cap him like that far out just because he is old and Duncan could knock him out. But I think Omar should win minutes pretty handily here. And I honestly think it's going to be pretty tough for Duncan to really ever be able to force extended exchanges. Lags, what do you think?
This is one for me where I think the line's like about right. Maybe you can make Omar a slightly bigger favorite, but like I'm not really willing to do that myself. I think more or less it's just going to be largely a brawl. 2 guys hit decently hard, not great defensively. You touched on him with Duncan closing the distance. I understand that, like super hittable as well, but like I don't like Omar Morales is not a guy where I think it's like he's just going to put it on. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's just not a high level thought in my opinion, or a high level opinion on this fight. So yeah.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, I like Morales as well, and this is another one I'm just waiting because the line's coming back the other way. Might get some slight plus on Morales, and unlike you, John, I'm not even worried about the line movement. Like I mostly ignore it outside of like injury stuff, especially on like a pay-per-view. I mean, we're coming off a week where everybody and their mother steamed Cedricus Dumas to minus 225.
I thought you were going to say Jan, and I was going to be like, it's still way too soon.
I mean that too. He obviously burned us with the round table there as the last leg. But I'm just saying, like, just because there's big line movement, I'm like, whatever. Like, people obviously disagree with me. That's fine. We'll see it play out, and we'll see who wins. But I like the Morales side for a couple reasons. For starters, now you mentioned the one concern for me is age and durability because he has been clipped. He has been knocked out. He did take some decent damage in the Giga Chikadze fight as well. Obviously dropped down in weight for that one. But then the Uros Medic, really wobbled him multiple times there. It wasn't even like he knocked him out completely. It was just like his brain shut off a couple times. But I think skill for skill, he's a much better striker here. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Chris Duncan, another Contender Series guy, did a ton of tape on him coming into Contenders both times, and really feel like I have a good read on him. Powerful dude, super hittable, basically brings nothing to the table except his power, will occasionally look to land takedowns, but he's not like an aggressive wrestler or even really a super skilled wrestler. Can he take Morales down? Maybe. I don't trust him to do that. And if he does, I think Morales is a better submission grappler. We don't see it that often, but he does hold the black belt. He does have some subs off his back. But I don't even think the fight's going to play out like that. What I think mostly happens is similar to the Slava Claus fight, where it's Duncan trying to cut off the cage and close distance and really struggling because he's getting his head snapped back by Omar Morales. Omar Morales has a strong jab, but what he has most is those powerful counter hook shots, and he throws everything into them. And I basically don't think any of those are going to miss this week. And I don't really trust Duncan's chin all that much either. I know he's shown he can fight through some adversity, but he's been hurt a lot. So I think one of those big, powerful counter shots from Morales is eventually going to find the button and put him out.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, you even mentioned the wrestling. I mean, this guy didn't, at the time, no one made a big deal about it because Slava was at Team Alpha Male, but like this guy couldn't hold Slava down. And after like what we've seen in a time since, that inability to like really dominate him in the grappling just hasn't aged very well whatsoever. So I'm pretty confident. Moving on here, we got Jack Shore, Makwan Amirkhani. Lags, what are your thoughts here?
Muted.
You're muted. So
sorry. I was trying to hit it, and I think it was just hitting back and forth. What I was saying there to what you were saying about the last fight with dominating the grappling. I think Shore dominates in the grappling here. And I was actually had some interest in the over, but it's also like I think Shore could just dominate him from the jump. really. Like Mach 1's cardio is not that good. I just don't think his wrestling is on par at all with Shore. So yeah, horrible matchup in my opinion.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, really don't have much to add. I mean, at this point, we know what Amirkhani brings to the table. He's got an excellent front choke series. Outside of that, he's extremely gassy, doesn't throw much volume on the feet, can't really do much other than, land a takedown or two and potentially submit you. And I just don't think either of those things are happening here against Jack Shore. I think it's a nice spot for him. Obviously, that's not a hot take at the price. I'm not going to bet him, but I do think he rolls here. The one thing I'll say is like, I guess the over 1.5 seems like a pretty popular play this week. I'm not betting the under by any means, but I wouldn't trust Amirkhani's durability to make it through 7.5 minutes, especially if he gasses, if we do see a high grappling pace here. So yeah, just a little bit of caution on that.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to do it, but I honestly do kind of think the pricing on this fight is wide. I'm trying to take less shots on dogs that I think are maybe value, but are probably going to lose the vast majority of the time. But I'll just give you my thinking. I mean, you look at this fight, Jack Shore allegedly back in October apparently pulled out of a fight with a serious knee injury. They never disclosed what it was, but that's like 6 months ago. Now we fast forward 6 months. He's coming back. He's also moving up in weight here now. It's his first fight at 145 pounds, fighting a guy who's been there his whole career. I think what maybe is coloring some of the line a bit is like kind of the optics of the way Pierce absolutely murdered Amirkhani. But like, I'll be honest, I think Pierce would smash Shore like pretty easily. Like Pierce is a very, very, very good wrestler. Like Shore was in a competitive fight with Hunter Azure not very long ago. I mean, they went to a split decision. That happened, so we all know with the stories of Amirkhani, it's like if Shore survives past 7 minutes, it's probably going to be a case where Amirkhani falls off a cliff and gets steamed on here. At the same time, like, again, I'm not betting it, but like Amirkhani's cardio throughout his career has been pretty weird, man. Like he went the distance with Kamuela Kirk, probably should have won that fight. The Burgos fight, he got smashed by Burgos and Pierce, but both of those guys are massive 45ers, and they're probably the two biggest cardio bullies in the weight class. Like, it's a guy who won a decision with Jason Knight. He went to a split decision with Arnold Allen. He's shown an ability to compete with some decent competition, over the course of an entire fight before. And so, Shore should be the better submission grappler here in theory, but I'm not sure he's the better wrestler. Timur Valiev took this guy down multiple times. Again, Shore's the better striker. He's obviously got the better gas tank. If he makes it through 7 minutes, he should probably win. I have no issue with him being a big favorite. But I can't get this thought out of my head that perhaps the market's putting a little too much into Mach 1 losing to some really good fighters, and now are just trusting Shore to kind of dominate up in a weight class he hasn't been at before. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to bet it. I think Shore should win, but I don't know. I just have this feeling it's going to be more competitive than what the market thinks. But I'm going to throw it back to you here, John. We got Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I thought maybe I'd get a playable line here on Marvin Vettori, and boy, was I wrong. Actually, I take that back. I think there was an opportunity. What did this open? Was this like minus 175
it was
minus
or something 200, I think. Okay. I saw people betting it at, maybe.
Probably and then I think it got back down to 225, I think, at one point. And I think that's where a lot of people jumped in on it, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a decent value on that still. Like Roman Dolidze, I mean, at some point, his luck's got to come to the end, right? Like this is a guy who has very clear finishing ability. I'm giving him 100% credit for that. Like he's powerful on the feet, powerful kicks, and really an impressive grappler. Not many people gave him much credit for that. Coming into the UFC, he was like one of those. I don't think it was ADCC, but he had like some blue belt something or other. But I know he was like basically a heel hook specialist coming into the UFC. But
I think it was ADCC Oceania, if I'm
that's
not
what
mistaken.
It was. Yeah. So it wasn't like super respected or whatever. But honestly, like what we saw against Hermanson, like I think it's pretty clear he is a threat on the ground while he's fresh. Now, the other things that I really don't like about him is he's another guy who does not put much volume out there. Very low, historically significant strikes per minute. Doesn't do really much of anything on the feet. And even in those slow-paced fights, he's still gassing out. This dude's cardio is terrible. And just because he hasn't paid the price for that recently doesn't mean he's not going to pay the price for it eventually. And I think that's what happens here against Marvin Vettori. I think Delite is probably drawing pretty thin here to maybe like some sort of weird scramble submission on the mat, which I don't think happens very often. I think Vittori's much, much more durable, much better gas tank, much more output. I think he wins.
Yeah, I have a small parlay that has Vettori attached to it with Usman. In addition to the other bets I have on Usman, which we'll get to. But I think Marvin's going to hurt this guy, to be honest. I don't know if he'll finish him or not, but I think it's easy to look at Marvin and be like, the guy doesn't finish a lot. You know, how can minus 250 be the side? And then it's like, go look at the guys who have beaten Marvin. Like, the guy has spent 90 minutes in the cage with Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, Antonio Carlos Jr. None of those guys have finished him. On the feet, I'm very confident, you know, he's going to outpace Roman and likely very, very significantly. You know, the big question with Roman, as always, is can Roman go and do what he did to Jack, you know, reverse him on the mat, get a calf slicer. And it's possible. Like, I thought Jack, if he got on top, would absolutely smash Roman. I was wrong about that. But, you know, we saw Marvin grapple Jack, and Marvin badly out-grappled him when Jack tried to initiate the grappling with him. Like, I think Marvin's just on a different level than anything he's seen. Like, if you see Delidze kind of like pulling him into guard or whatever, I kind of think Marvin hurts him pretty badly on top here. Marvin's super positionally sound. No one really sweeps him. And the cardio dynamic here is just, you know, insanely different. You know, Marvin's got elite cardio and elite output. Delidze is not only low output, he's got no defense and has terrible cardio, and he's fought way worse competition. I think Marvin's going to blow through him fairly easily. I honestly think there's probably still value at the line here. I know it's easy to reflexively be like, oh, you know, Marvin can't be value here, but like, listen to the guys I just listed that didn't finish Marvin. Like, I don't think Delidze is finishing him. I think he's going to cut through him pretty easy. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, the only things I'll really add to that is like, there's a reason why like a lot of us wanted Delidze to fight Vettori, and we were hoping like to get a good lineup because he is that guy with elite cardio, durability, and output. That it's like, how does Delidze win the fight outside of a meme, really? So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like even at minus 275, minus 280, where it's at right now, I think there's still a ton of value on Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on. I'll start it off, and I'll let my boy Jon Kelly rebut me here.
I'll end out the trio here.
We got Casey O'Neill,
like John me.
We got Casey O'Neill, Jennifer Maia. I got Jennifer Maia for 2 units at plus 150 here. I have obviously been on the opposite side of Casey a couple times in her time in the UFC, and it has bitten me badly. I think this is kind of where she runs up against it. Look, I think John's going to go into this a bit. I think Casey has a great style for winning WMMA fights. You know, she's got great cardio. She pushes a hellacious pace. She's a doer of things, and she attempts a ton of takedowns. I think it's going to work against all but the top level. The thing is, while I think she can get takedowns here, I kind of think she's kind of steering into fire if she takes Maia down. You know, Maia can play guard, but she's also shown a pretty good ability to get up when she wants to. And Casey's so aggressive on top. I kind of think if she tries to like really pass aggressively with Maia, she's more likely to end up on bottom. And I actually trust Maia a bit more than I trust Casey to consolidate top position. On the feet, I think Maia's got this all day. You know, Marina Moroz to me is a better volume striker, a much better volume striker than Casey is, in spite of Casey's last performance. And Maia basically shut down her volume completely and completely pieced her up in her last fight. Yeah, I mean, Maia's a huge step up. This is a woman whose losses are to like Valentina Shevchenko, Katlyn Chukagian, and Manon Fiorot. I really think she handles her easy on the feet. The entire question to me just comes down to whether or not Maia plays guard here, which could happen. But like I said, I think even if that happens, there are a lot of opportunities for her to sweep and take top position. And I think if she wants to get up, she should be able to. I just think there's physical attributes that favor Casey here, but I also think Maia is a stronger fighter, and I think she's a much better technical fighter. So, I mean, I'm bet this is probably it. If she beats Jennifer Maia, I'm probably not even going to get a decent opportunity to fade her again. So the final martingale, I believe Pepe said the other day, and that is That's where I'm aligned. Jon Kelly, tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, so this is one we're gonna ruffle some feathers here. So for starters, I'm just gonna come out and say skills don't necessarily matter in women's MMA. And what I mean by that is if you have somebody like Casey O'Neill, who I have a max play on at -175, so you'll either be laughing at me on Saturday or saying I'm a genius, one or the other, zero in between. But I do agree with what you said about Maya's striking ability. Obviously, she's the better boxer here, one of the better boxers in the division. But really, what I keep going back to is like what I mean by skills don't matter. When you have someone like Casey, who, like you mentioned, is a doer of things, she's constantly being active, whether that's on the feet, which I do think she's going to have to eat some shots here from Jennifer Maia. It's no secret Maya's a better striker, and I do expect O'Neill to eat some shots. She basically eats some shots in all of her fights, so it's not going to surprise anybody. But why I still favor her in this matchup is because not only is she going to be constantly moving forward and mixing in the takedowns, like when she gets on top, and I do expect her to get on top here. Jennifer Maia defends takedowns at just 55% in the UFC. A lot of the times when Maya's taken down, you mentioned it, she's playing guard a little bit too much, and she's closing her guard, not working back up to her feet. Those are things I don't want to see from a fighter that I expect to be taken down here at a pretty high clip. And then when you look at what Casey O'Neill does, she's extremely aggressive on top. And, you know, those vicious elbows in all of her fights. Anytime she gets on top, she is making it count, making it score. And I think if she's able to do that, even if Maia eventually does work back to her feet or sweep, and I know I feel like more people give her more credit than I do. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, well Maia, you know, she'll just insta reverse Casey. Like she might. I wouldn't be so sure. I mean, for starters, she's never reversed anybody statistically in the UFC. I know Casey's not like extremely positionally sound because she is so aggressive, but she's pretty heavy on top with her hips. Like she's not bad. When she is grappling, she follows the hips well as well. And you see like she's still young and inexperienced, but you see the natural progression in a lot of her fights, which I did go back and watch every single one of her fights this weekend. But I just think like just from a minute winning standpoint, and you know, I mean, you've known me long enough now that that's basically what I almost always go back to is who's going to be the better minute winner here. And I think it's overwhelmingly Casey O'Neill. Yes, she's going to eat some shots, but again, pretty much all of her matchups, and this is a step up, but she's going to eat some shots and she's going to keep going. You know, the Laura Procopio fight, Procopio looked good early, and guess what? O'Neill broke her with the pace, with the cardio, with the wrestling, and eventually got on top and did bad things to her. Antonina Shevchenko looked great early, was piecing her up, even controlled her against the fence. O'Neill's not going to stop. She's going to keep going, and eventually she's going to get in those dominant positions, and that's where I think she's going to make it count and be the difference here. So I think I got O'Neill by decision. And I know someone just mentioned the ACL surgery. It's fine, dude. ACL, no big deal. 7 months. She's built different. Go Scotland.
You know, I do think it is like kind of one of these fights where it's like whoever wins is probably going to seem very obvious in retrospect. I sort of feel like either Maya's going to completely shut down her game and blow her out, or O'Neill's going to get like 11 minutes of top time and win the fight like fairly easily. Like I'd be surprised if it's like a Close. Very dicey split, you know, either way. Yeah. So
I agree. See. I agree. That's why I was saying before, like it's either like I look really stupid or it's like, oh wow, O'Neill was value at -175. So I obviously think the latter. You think the former, but we'll see.
Lags, what do you think? Any charged up takes here?
No charged up takes, but I'll be honest with you, John. You are my co-host. It is what it is. But I'm leaning more on Jon Kelly's side, just because I do think in general she is Judas. More like we talked about.
Judas.
I know she is more of a doer of things on the feet. Like even though like we talked about, Maia is the better striker of the two, but I think the pace on the feet with Casey, I think that's can make up for the difference. And then in the wrestling for sure, I think she can be able to land takedowns and control her pretty dominantly. So yeah, I know. Sorry, John. Had to do it to you. Waiting on Jon Kelly.
We'll see what happens. I've been wrong on Casey O'Neill. I can't even say more often than not. I've just been wrong every fight. So we'll see if it turns around here or not. Moving on. It's an interesting fight, or maybe not that interesting. Glags, any takes here? We got Gunnar Nelson. He's a big fave. He's taking on Brian Barberina here.
I think this is a gross fight, honestly. I think we should just give Barberena like more fun fights, to be honest with you, not ones where it's like Gunner's probably going to control him and dominate him in the grappling for large portions of the fight, probably finish him. Yeah, I think Gunner inside the distance or the under would probably be the best look at this fight, really.
Jon Kelly, what do you think?
I think this is like the one fight that I'm like not even remotely interested in this week. Like, I think Gunnar Nelson is going to take him down a lot. I think he maybe finds a sub, maybe he doesn't. Honestly, don't really care. I think he wins. I'm not going to bet it. To Lag's point, I agree. I think they need to give Brian Barberena matchups like Matt Brown, even though Matt Brown wrestled a lot more in that fight, but like they just keep matching him up with these wrestlers. Jason Witt 8 times took him down. Darian Weeks 4 times took him down. RDA 4 times. And like I said, Matt Brown, more of a striker, but did go to the wrestling there. Barberena just can't defend takedowns. And now he's going up against somebody that only wants to land takedowns and grapple. So I think it's fairly easy to think that Gunnar Nelson here gets the fight to the ground where he needs it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's funny because when I saw the line, my initial instinct was Barb's probably value because he has throughout his career done a very good job of getting back to his feet. The problem is he gives his back to get to his feet every time. And I mean, Gunner's the best back taker in the entire division. I'm not saying Barb can't win this fight, but I think for him to win it, he's going to need a pressure off the jump very, very aggressively. Like, I think if Barberena ends up on the back foot here, he's getting taken down and getting backpacked pretty much as soon as that happens. So I do think Gunner's kind of chinny and fragile. And I think if Barb pressured immediately, he might have a chance to like make something happen. But ultimately, it's just like you look at Barb, and I was really trying really hard to find an angle to bet Barberena in this fight. But the guy's just got no hips, man. Like he just has no ability to sprawl or grab a whizzer and stuff takedown. So it's like, even though I don't rate Gunner's wrestling, you know Gunner's not going to hang in range. He's going to dart in and out until he shoots. And I kind of think a takedown is the rounder of the fight. I'm kind of leaning towards Gunner subbing him. I like Barb, so I hope he knocks him out. But I kind of think I'm with you guys. I think Gunner gets him down, gets his back, and either finishes or just rides him out like the Sato fight. But I kind of think more likely than not finishes. Moving on, co-main event, banger fight. Jon Kelly, what do you think? We got Justin Gaethje. He's taking on Rafael Fiziev.
I think this is an awesome fight. I mean, the fans are not going to be disappointed here. 2 guys that are super exciting. I like both of these guys. I'm definitely more of a Gaethje fanboy. I'm probably going to bet Justin Gaethje here. Haven't done it yet. I think I'm leaning towards playing the knockout prop because I do think over if this does go 15 minutes, I do think Fiziev wins at a pretty decent clip here. I think Gaethje probably needs to hurt him multiple times to win rounds and avoid getting hurt himself. But I do think just the way that these guys match up, it's a high variance matchup in that they're gonna stand and trade for 15 minutes. I'm not expecting either of them to grapple, and that's been the way that you take advantage of Justin Gaethje. And by the way, those were 2 of the best grapplers the UFC has ever seen in Charles Oliveira and Khabib Nurmagomedov. So I don't think Fiziev's going to grapple here. I think they're going to stand and trade. Fiziev's going to blast him with body kicks all day long, but Gaethje's going to move forward, get in the pocket, make it dirty, and hopefully land something big. So we're going more Gaethje. Hope he gets a knockout.
Yeah, I don't have a bet here. I'm probably not going to bet it unless the line like really blows out. It's kind of funny because like my initially reflexively when I first saw the line, I was like, I really like Fiziev. Then I looked at it and I was like, I kind of like Gaethje. But then the more I think about it, I'm just like, I don't really want to steer into it. It's kind of weird because I do think if Gaethje can take the shots early and pressure hard, that like there is real scope for him taking over down the stretch of this fight. You know, we've seen Fiziev slow down quite a bit before. The problem is I worry about where Gaethje's chin is at. You know, he's always had the ability to get hurt and rally back, but it seems like he's rallying back a bit less these days and he's getting hurt a lot more often. And so you have a guy with Fiziev who's as explosive and as technical and as fast as he is. And I think the opportunities for him to really damage Gaethje are going to be there early and often. I will say, I think the interesting dynamic here is that I'm not sure Fiziev's going to be able to get off on as many of his kicks as he usually does. You know, it's funny because Gaethje's known as being like Homer Simpson, but he actually checks kicks very well in just about every fight. It's very hard to leg kick Gaethje. If you actually rewatch the Tony Ferguson fight, Ferguson was so fucked up he couldn't kick at the end of the fight because Gaethje kept checking him. So I actually think he has some scope for like closing distance here and making something happen. And Fiziev, not historically a big head striker. And so I do think Gaethje could theoretically pressure hard, get in the pocket, throw down with him, and make something happen. But I just don't lean that way because I think Fiziev's the superior technician. He's faster. I think Fiziev is peaking and hitting his prime here, whereas to me, it seems fairly clear that Gaethje is, he's still fighting at a high level, but he's pretty clearly declining. I just kind of think that, the finishing equity is fairly high on both sides, but I kind of think it's so high on the Fiziev side that when you add in the technique, the line's probably right. I'm rooting for Gaethje, but I kind of think Fiziev takes him out. I actually kind of think though, like Fiziev, I think his K. I rarely say this, but I do think the Fiziev KO makes a lot more sense than the Fiziev money line, just because if Fiziev's covering his price here or even matching his price, he's knocking him out at more than a 40% clip, in my opinion. I don't see many ways this goes the distance and is not competitive. Because if it goes the distance, it means Gaethje's walking through the shots, and it's probably a competitive fight if that's the case. So I think a poke on Fiziev KO is kind of interesting here. Haven't done it myself, but I think it's interesting if you like the Fiziev side. Lags, what do you think?
So I'll talk about the prop market since you guys are talking about the money line market. I would play on the under 2.5 rounds at -135. Yeah, I think the speed and the durability edges for Fiziev are pretty big here. And kind of like what you touched on, John, in the beginning there. I'm not sure that Gaethje can really eat the shots at this point. So I think early in the fight, I think Fiziev's super dangerous, can probably find a finish. So I think the under 2.5's a great look, honestly. I think it's just more of, again, a recency bias, kind of like what I talked about last card with Volkov and Romanov, with Romanov's recent fight going the distance with Tybura. I think we're kind of seeing that a little bit with the Chandler Gaethje with that fight going distance, and now we're getting a decently playable under where I don't see hardly any grappling upside. So,
yeah, I agree. Moving on, we got the main event, the third round, the trilogy. Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman. Doesn't really feel like a trilogy since the first fight happened as long ago as it did, but it is in fact a trilogy. I'm big on Usman here. I obviously broke this fight down in depth 8 months ago, the last time they fought. I bet him at -330 in the last bout. Not a whole lot that I saw has really changed my view. I have about 4 units on the money line. I have a unit parlayed with Vettori. I guess the best arguments for me that you can make for the Leon side is how is Usman going to respond coming off his first KO? And that's a fair argument, except it's not like Usman's never been dinged before. This is not a guy who's suddenly going to be gun shy. And also just kind of look at the first fight. Leon landed 20 total head strikes in that entire fight. 20 significant head strikes. It's not as if this is a kind of fight where Usman's coming off being KO'd stiff and we're expecting him to come in and throw down in a brawl. It's not that at all. We know what he's going to do. He's going to come forward. He's going to pressure. And he's going to try to grapple with him or push him up in the clinch. It happened the first fight. And I kind of think just stylistically, not going to go too deep into it since we've all seen the fucking fight. Kind of stylistically, Leon just has a style that makes it kind of easy for Kamaru to get off on his game. He does manage distance well, but he's not really a jab and move kind of guy. He's really more of I want to plant my feet and just counter you or exchange. And those kind of guys Usman eats up because it just makes it very easy for Kamaru to back him up to the fence and then just get him into the clinch. And, even rewatching that fight, I know Leon won round 1, but I would bet serious money that Leon's not going to hit an outside trip from the over-under position again because he was losing that round before that happened, and Kamaru won the rest of the fight. And, people can talk about, the durability aspect on the Kamaru side, but Brian Barberino almost finished Leon Edwards. Nate Diaz almost finished Leon Edwards. I am very surprised at the confidence that Leon's KO equity is higher. Usman is a serious hitter, and Leon's a guy who has shown the ability to get hurt before. So, I kind of think Usman's pretty live to finish him here. Look, maybe I'm wrong, and, maybe the cardio is different this time, except I've seen Leon slow down in just about every 5-round fight he's ever been in, and now he's fighting at Usman's pace again. I don't think a lot has changed. The stats favor Usman. In my opinion, the tape favors Usman. I've seen takes that Leon's going to be more confident now, and it's these guys just fought for 24 minutes, and we all know how that 24 minutes went. Leon knows how that 24 minutes went. Do you really think because he landed a head kick, he's more confident that Kamaru won't just drag him into deep waters again? I'm not buying it. I think Usman should be about 80%. I'm big on him. I don't think a lot changes. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I had this view before the first fight or before the second fight. I still have this view before the third fight. Lags, what do you think?
I mentioned to you earlier in the week that this fight gives me a lot of just remnants of the Nunes Pena rematch, where it's like everybody was like, "Oh, Nunes is done. She's washed. Is she ever going to make it back?" This and that. People had, tiny little 1 units on Pena, and then she gets absolutely smoked in the rematch, 50-44, non-competitive, not even close. And I kind of think that's what we're seeing here. Like people are just not watching the fight. Like Usman has dominated the large portion of the minutes in both of these fights, and we're getting a significant decrease in the price. Yeah, I think Usman Vettori, for me, that's a solid parlay piece at -109. Yeah, I don't think there's much time to add. I think people are just playing too much into the narratives, like you had touched on.
Jon Kelly, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, at the risk of being too boring here, I'm totally with you guys. I mean, we had our disagreement earlier, so I feel like I'm allowed to agree with you guys now. But I mean, in all seriousness, Lags, you just mentioned the main thing is like he's dominated the large portion of the minutes, not just the large portion, literally almost every single minute, and we have a massive sample. Even dating back to the first time they fought, which isn't super relevant now, but it's like the rematch looked kind of similar to me. Like Usman's the better striker. He's going to be putting more output out there. He's going to take him down multiple times and control him, just like he did the last time. Can Leon land something heavy like that again? Of course he can. It's MMA. Like that stuff happens. But being able to think that that's going to somehow be more repeatable now than it was when Usman was -2,000 or whatever going into that last little section of the fight there. So I mean, I just think Usman's a much better fighter pretty much in all areas here. So I think Usman wins. Don't really have any interest in Leon.
Yeah, agreed. Pepe mentioned Usman's knees might be in trouble, but and I've heard that, but also if you go way back and watch his interview with Joe Rogan before the first Colby fight, he had no cartilage in his knees back then. He talked about it ad nauseum, and that was 5 fights ago. Yeah. I mean, if he gets stuck out in space, he's probably not hitting takedowns in space, but Usman doesn't really hit takedowns in space anyway. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I think Kamaru is going to handle business this time. Maybe retire after. We'll see. But War Usman, I bet him at -330. I'm sure shit betting him at -230 off that performance. So,
yeah, and that's another thing I'll add. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, go.
Oh, all I was going to say is I didn't even have a bet in the first fight. And now, again, kind of given all we talked about, it's like, how are you not betting Usman at this price?
Yeah, so, yeah. I agree. So, Jon Kelly, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. You want to shout out to people where they can find you, what you do, what your website is?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Jon Kelly DFS. Fightnumbers.com is my website. You guys should all check it out. Once again, thank you guys for having me on. I definitely appreciate it. And I'm sorry once again for showing up a little bit late to the party, but it's always a good time when I get to chop it up with you two.
We appreciate it, John. Guys, as usual, you can find me at Twitter at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. And again, Jon Kelly at Jon Kelly DFS. Good luck on your bets this weekend. If you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. And we'll see you back here same time next week. We got a banger fight night next week. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the weekend.